Hello everyone and welcome back to the How to Master series on F1 22. I'm Brendan Lee, F1 esports driver for Ferrari, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to drive Monza. So with all that being said, let's be getting into the gameplay, and I'll be getting straight into showing you the setup to be using. So I've just taken this off time trial, so it's a good baseline setup. So 0-0 wing, 55-51, right, left, 291175, 150, 22.5 and 21.0 on the rear tires. So like I say, minimal time being wasted. I don't want to do all the chitter chatter and make the video longer than it needs to be. I respect the time that you have, so I want to keep this all nice and condensed. So coming to start the lap, we're going to be doing is open up the corner as much as possible, and ideally being in 5th gear, hit the power as hard as power and use up all the road on the exit. Now you're coming onto the pit straight. You keep the car as straight as possible, so you can see opening up DRS straight away, but I'm pointing all the way down to turn 1, and without having to turn the steering wheel, I've arrived always to the left hand side. So braking at the 100-meter board, or just before if you're not that confident in the braking for turn 1, and you'll be braking as hard as possible, going down the gears. Nice consistency is really important, not to lock the rear axle. You'll be going down into 4th gear, and you want to be just taking this sort of green, white and red part of the curbing. I don't really like taking the orange curb on the inside. You can, but it's pretty inconsistent. So now you'll be in 4th gear. You'll be exiting the first turn in the middle of the road to open up the left-hander. You don't really want to touch any of the curb on the inside here, because it's going to take away the traction potential of the car. So you're still going to be in 4th gear, and you'll be keeping the car straight as possible on the X to maximize traction. As the curb ends on the right hand side, you'll be pulling the short shift to 5th gear if you have got a little bit of wheel spin. If you're confident enough in your power management on the throttle, then you will be staying in 4th gear until the revs are ready to go into 5th gear. Flat out for the right hander, trying to take the distance of take the path of least distance. Now, second chicane, braking at the 100-meter board. Super critical to brake here. Brake super late, and you'll be going down to 4th gear for arguably the most difficult corner on the track. Because if you look at this orange curb here, it doesn't look that big when you look at it as a picture. But getting the car to settle over this curb in this trajectory is so difficult. But if you get it right, you're going to gain 2 tenths. 2 tenths of a second for doing very marginally, very little, to be honest. And of course, in F1 esports or any league racing, career mode, whatever you're doing, time trial even, finding 2 tenths of free, well, who doesn't want 2 tenths? I have to say, it's very difficult to nail, very difficult to get consistent. So it's going to take a lot of practice to be able to nail that. But then moving forward, wait, you can actually see my car has officially become stuck on the curb. That's never happened to me before. So that just shows, like, that's a perfect example of it, actually. Is although the curb looked very small before, we're still stuck. So that's a perfect example of it. So even though the curb looked extremely small on visual, when you actually try to drive the car over it, it has a lot of impact on the car. So what we're going to do is drive right back around to the second chicane, and we'll pick it back up. But until we get there, I want to talk about some tricks and traits of this track, because of course you want to run low downforce. Of course you want to be as fast as possible in a straight line, and we're just going to ignore the first turn here. This is part of the track guide, how to nail Monza. But in the race, it's so difficult to manage the tyres here, because you have to make sure the rear tyres maintain good traction, good grip. That's where all your lap time comes from on Monza, is top speed and traction. So if you wear out and overheat your rear tyres in the race, you're going to lose tenths per lap. So it's super critical to manage that. And now picking up from where we left off, do not be taking any of that orange curb on the inside. You want to run the car just scraping it. You never want to fully touch it. But only on the red, white and green part of the curb. On the exit of the chicane, using up all the road possible again, and keeping the car as straight as possible, running all the way to exit the curb to try and keep the car as straight as possible in the traction phase. Now, coming up to the right-hander, we've got a bit of banking in the corner. It's actually quite difficult to see. There isn't really a braking marker for this turn, so you sort of have to brake after the 50-meter board, when it feels right. I personally prefer to stay in 6th gear throughout this apex, but looking down, when you get a bit lower, the lower camera angles, you can actually see the banking on the turn. So it's super critical to get your car to this clipping point here. If you see the clipping point here, it's absolutely critical to get here because it means you can be in 6th gear and you can get really, really hard on the power and use up all the road on the exit. Super critical again to pull the car off the AstroTurf before you get to this part of the track because there's a bit of a bump there and it can cost you a few thousandths of a second. And of course, we want every thousandth that we can be getting in lap time. Coming up into the second right-hander here. So again, you'll be braking after the 50-meter board. There isn't really a marker board here, but much like the first apex, there's a bit of banking in the corner. You can just about see it as you're arriving to the apex. So what you want to be doing here, though, is getting 2 tyres on this part of the AstroTurf. Because what it does, now it gives the car a flat platform. It's quite difficult to see. But I want to do a imagination with you. So imagine you're arriving to the corner, and you can see it's got a bit of banking. If you take the car here, it is going to be, let's say, more grippy, but you're also distant. You're doing a longer distance. It's more grippy because when you have banking in the corner, we call it camber. When the camber's leaning inwards, it's going to help you generate grip. When it's leaning outwards, it's really going to hurt you with your grip levels and make the car inconsistent. But the reason that you kind of want to ignore the camber here is because there's so much real estate on this inside curbing that if you can master it and get 2 tyres on the inside, even though theoretically there's less grip, you're traveling so less distance and making the corner much wider in the angle that you're just going to gain so much lap time. What's critical also here is there's little traction this year on the exit. So although you're actually exiting medium speed, fairly high speed exit, because of the AstroTurf, and again, the curbing has a bit of a crest to it. You can't really see it too well in the camera angle, but the curbing does have a crest to it, and this white line is the highest part of the curb. So if you're running too low on the rear ride height, you actually do bottom out on this curb, and it can be quite dangerous actually. And I've, to be honest, in practice ended up on the wall on the right hand side a few too many times. Open up DRS as soon as possible. Flat out through the kink left, and now what you're going to be doing is pointing underneath this advertising board all the way straight forward, and you'll be braking at the 100-meter board. I prefer just to go down into 6th gear here and then maintain good apex speed. You want to be getting the car nailed like this, but never touching those little bits of curb on the inside. But again, super difficult not to cut the corner here, because you can see how close I am to the white line already. And judging that in 6th gear at very high speed is not the easiest task. So you have to be very precise here. And now 6th gear, and you'll be using up the curb on the right hand side to open up the track. So always flat out for this left-hander. You can take the curb there if you dare. Short shift to 7th if you find the car being a little bit unstable. And that'll give you a bit more traction and stability to exit onto this back straight. Coming up to Parabolica. And now you'll be braking when that AstroTurf ends on the left-hand side. So you can see this AstroTurf transitions over to real grass. And as soon as that is ending, then you're going to be hitting the brakes. I prefer, again, to go down into 6th gear. If I find myself running a little bit wide with understeer, then I go down to 5th gear as the final click. But again, pulling 6th gear as a short shift as soon as possible and opening up the road on the exit. And a quarter-flying lap, you'll bring the car back over to the right-hand side to minimise the distance. But now, we're going to be doing the lap at full speed. So again, check the brake bias, check the differential. All settings are perfect. Flying down into turn 1. Braking at the 100-meter board. Down to 4th gear. Ooh, that was a bit loosey-goosey. But you can see, putting the traction, I didn't need to do the short shift there. So it was quite ideal. The car got a bit loose under braking, so I had to try and catch it. So again, like I say, taking the 2 bits of the curbing, now coming down, braking at 100-meter board, trying to nail the chicane. We actually got it pretty good on that time. You can see the car still bounced, but it was able to manage it because the curb was quite good. See, keep it in 6th gear, look for that clipping point, bit of wheel spin on the exit, a bit too hard on the power for myself there. Down to 5th gear, take the curb on the inside, and then run all the way on the exit, open up the gear. So we're going to do another lap. We'll do another lap after that, after this one. Trying to explain it a bit more in detail because it's quite a short lap here. 100-meter board, down 2 gears, take the curb on the inside, now hard on the power, keep it flat, keep it committed. Short shift to 7 over the bump just to give a bit more traction and stability. Will especially help in the races, and qualifying maybe is not so necessary coming down into the final corner. See, AstroTurf ends on the left hand side, down to 6th gear. Now trying to manage the power on the exit. Bring the car over to the right hand side and coming over for one more lap. So opening up DRS. Flying down to turn 1. You see the car's pointing straight all the way to this braking point. 100-meter board, spot it, down into 4th gear. Down to 4th gear, lovely. Take the first curve, avoid the second curve, lovely rotation. Move on the power, didn't need to short shift again. Maintain the traction very nicely there. Through the right-hander, path of least distance is critical here. Braking at the 100-meter board. Down into 4th gear. Can we get the curve nailed again? We can. That was actually quite a good one. Short shift to 5th on the exit for good traction if you need it. Keep it in 6th. Look for that clipping point. Smooth on the power. Much better than last lap. Now down into 5th gear. So you keep the curb on the inside. Smooth on the power. Lovely jubbly. Open up DRS. 7th, 8th gear. Flat out through the king. Now pointing the car all the way to the outside of the track. Braking at the 100-meter board. Down into 6th gear. Down 2 gears. See now taking the curb. Keep the car committed. Short shift to 7th over the bump. And now we are coming up to the final corner once again, pulling the car in a straight line all the way to the left. Now when the AstroTurf ends on the left-hand side, down to 6th gear, look for that clicking point, smooth on the power, use up all the road, and now bring the car back over to the right-hand side to finish the lap. So everyone, if that has been helpful to you and you've enjoyed this track guide, be sure to like, subscribe, and I'll be doing these for the remainder of the season. So yeah, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you for next video. See you then. Ciao, ciao.